Sondra London, you were in that courtroom. What was, I mean, a lot of courtrooms you have a mood. There's a tension or something like that in the air. What was it like for you sitting there?
For me, I was torn in so many different directions at once, and I feel the same way now. You know, I mean, it's just a tragedy. It's not a matter of someone wins and someone loses. It's all so terribly tragic. And a case like Johnny Kearns couldn't have been a finer lawyer. They're working as a public defender, chronically understaffed, underpaid, and they gave him the finest defense you could give. I had to say, even though I was sensitized to the suffering of the offender, and this was one mitigator, if you had put me on that jury and told me what my orders were, that I was to weigh aggravators against mitigators, I don't care how sympathetic I was to the suffering of this offender, there's no way that that would come anywhere near approaching the number of aggravators that were presented to the jury. And you know, it's sad. It's very, the whole thing is just a sad situation on every side.
So, Sondra, you're saying you would have had to vote for the death penalty?
Yes,
if you
and
were on
as
that
far
jury.
as looking at, you know, the position of the defense lawyer, it's an honor to be a part of a judicial system that takes even the most heinous offender and gives him every possible chance to present whatever case there may be. And this offender, he had one paltry mitigator, and that was mental illness. And his attorneys did a great job of presenting that. But, you know, there you go, that's one. And he had how many aggravators? 23?
Now, Sondra, you're wearing on your shirt, it says, "Crime does not pay," and that has, I think, a double meaning for you. Tell us about your book and what's happened with the book. You've been fighting for years, basically, to try to get the profits from the book you co-authored with Danny Rolling, The Making of a Serial Killer.
Tell you the truth, June, it was a struggle just writing it. Of course, we started working on this in 1992 when we were served with a lawsuit. As soon as they got his admissions of guilt, they turned around and sued me and Danny Rolling, and that was in 1993. Well, that was prior restraint. We had not written the confessions, and they had no felony conviction, and there was no money, there was no contract, there was no book. Nevertheless, they filed suit to prevent us from continuing to work together and to do this story. So from 1993 through 94, when we had the trial there, and then after that, when we finally finished up the whole project with the murder confessions, then we published it in the Globe, and that was when they seized the money from the Globe. That was $15,000 by the time it reached me. Danny Rolling had signed an agreement specifying that he would never get a cent.
Sondra London, you were in that courtroom. We heard someone crying out. Who was that? We heard some crying in the background.
There were shouts, and Judge Morris had warned not to make any outbursts, but they did have outbursts. And I know that Court TV did cover the part where Emmanuel Tabota leapt to his feet and screamed, and then turned and threatened me. And then when Jim Larson came up to me and threatened to kill me, that was the kind of thing that was going on in court there.
Were you in fear as you were going in and out of the courthouse? Were the victims' families or identifying you with the crime in some way?
It's worked out that way, but you know, I don't really consider this to be something that is their own original idea. I believe that this whole situation was more or less spun for advantage by the state's attorney's office in order to redirect some of that animosity my way. Actually, it would have been more preferable if Danny Rolling had fought this so that Rod Smith could be perceived as a victor, but because due to my assistance and cooperation with the state, and Danny Rolling had pled guilty, it appears to me that then all that animosity had been spun and directed toward me.